Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Zadov's Chess Channel, and welcome to the Computer Rapid Chess Championship Super Final between the two top engines, Lila C0 and Stockfish 13. Stockfish 13 is really brutalizing Lila C0. The result is plus 29 for Stockfish 13. As I'm recording this video, the result is 109 points for Stockfish 13 and only 80 points for Lila C0. So whatever they play, Stockfish always find good ways to get out of some dubious openings. Stockfish always find good ways to win games when the evaluation is much better for Stockfish. So it's simply better. We have to get used to it. And today I wanted to show really great game in the Bogo Indian defense. And I think in this game you see again the attacking brilliancy by Stockfish 13. Stockfish simply pushes the pawns. Stockfish doesn't care about weaknesses. Stockfish doesn't care about the king endangered positions. He's simply attacking the position, tries to get spaces, try to get attacking formations. Really a beautiful game. And I think for those who have trouble maybe to play against the Bogo Indian defense, this is also a perfect example. Let's check out now the game. As usual, we have the sound. So round one, let's go fight. So d4 played by Stockfish 13, knight to f6 by Lila C0, we have c4, e6, and now after the move knight to f3, we have the so-called counter Nmc3 Indian setup. Again, we're not allowing after knight to c3 this pinning idea, but Lila C0 plays bishop to b4 anyway. There are several ways how to defend this position. You could go knight to d2. Bishop to d2 is more accurate when it comes to computer evaluations. I like to play myself here the move knight from b to d2, then kick away the bishop, a3 b4. If bishop takes the d2 happens, then I could recapture with the bishop or with the queen. But okay, bishop to d2. We have now a5 played by Lila c0, fixing the position on dark squares. There are also some lines after bishop to b4, a takes b4. What black has gained here, I think it's a good grip on dark squares. Black would then build with d6, c5, b6, a fortress on dark squares, and would simply try to compete against this bad bishop. The good part of this setup is I think that black could, after b6 and bishop to b7, would have a better activity when it comes to the activity of the light square bishops. But okay, you still have this double pawn structure on the b file, so of course Stockfish would have also some counterplay here in this particular line. So after the move a5, here Stockfish goes queen to c2. We have d6. This move is actually already evaluated in its accuracy, because what you do here is a little bit locking your bishop. In some occasions you can see that the Bogo Indian or maybe the Nmc3 Indian defense player, they are sometimes similar, the structures of the Bogo and the Nmc3 Indian. Here after move d6 you're locking out a little bit your bishop. So if this bishop gets endangered, sometimes in some occasions you can see the Bogo Indian will play also the move bishop to e7, retreating with the bishops of d6 is cutting off here the potential connection, the potential escape route for the dark square bishop. So here Stockfish now after this moment goes all in and plays a brilliant move g4. G4 immediately creates madness on the board. The problem is now if you try knight to g4, then you're risking always this move rook to g1, followed with an attack against the g7 pawn. If you try, for instance, after move rook to g1, the move e5, still we can play h3, and after knight to f6 we could simply take. And the problem is now after the move e4, here you have actually a great counter attack. So e4 is not such a good move here for black. You could go a3, kicking away the bishop, and now after bishop to d2, knight to d2, and still you see this pawn is a long-term weakness. We could attack it further with knight to c3. And the good part is in this particular scenario, this wasn't played in the game of course, but in this particular scenario white would be faster in development. Knight to c3 and simply queenside castling. The problem is now for black that black cannot castle anymore kingside, and see now these pieces are not developed. Black would need many tempi in order to secure the king, and still it would be very risky to castle even queenside, because you have already weakened your pawn structure with the move a5. The pawn structure is messed up, so you would castle actually into a weakened position. So that's why here after the move g4, Lila c0 doesn't react, play simply b6, here also developing the light square bishop. There are maybe better ideas simply to take bishop takes d2, maybe knight to d2, and then trying at least maybe something like h6, preventing this g5 move. Okay, but still, after the move b6, it's of course a natural idea developing the light square bishop, also a natural idea in the Bogo Indian defense. We have now g5 immediately by Stockfish, knight to d7, and now knight to c3. Here Stockfish 13 prepares the queenside castling. We have bishop to b7 and now h4, simply expanding on the king side, because what black would actually love to do is now secure the king somehow and play on the normal Bogo Indian idea, the move e5. The move e5 is sort of a liberating line for black, then maybe something like queen to e7, and maybe then afterwards to push the pawn on e4. But here, after the move queen to e7, you see Stockfish continues the attack on the king side, supports simply the pawn on g5, because if you advance too early this move, this pawn on h5, then you're risking some ideas. Bishop to f3, e takes f3, and then this pawn on g5 could be a long-term weakness. So that's why Stockfish supports it first with rook to g1, and we have now h6. Leela C0 is trying to break the positions, breaking the space advantage that Stockfish has built here. We have a3, kicking away the bishop, and you see now you have to take the knight bishop to c3, and now bishop takes c3 happened. And the good part for white here is many times in the Bogo Indian, Nimzo Indian setups, after the move bishop to c3, at least black has gained, after b takes c3, the double pawn structure, at least black has gained some kind of a weakness. But now after bishop to c3, it's a perfect position for white. White can even expand here with the move e4, will create then really a nice central space advantage. So here in the game we have h takes g5, h takes g5, and now knight to c6, attacking the pawn on d4. The problem is now d5 is not so good immediately, because after e takes d5, e takes d5, still black has here a powerful control of the e5 square. Then also the d5 is a long-term weakness, so it's playable here, I think, here for black. So after the move e takes knight to c6, here g6 was played by Stockfish 13. Stockfish is simply attacking further the king side, really well stuff, and you don't want to take, of course. After f takes g6, queen to g6 could happen, then you have the g7 weakness, the king could be in danger. So here Leela C0 tried f6, is trying at least to keep the position compact somehow. Here, although this is a very annoying pawn, but still Leela C0 has now opportunities to castle queenside, as I said, but still you have already weakened a little bit your pawn structure with the move a5 and also with the move b6. So here Stockfish goes immediately d5 again, really not allowing here Leela C0 to breathe, not allowing Leela C0 to regroup. We have e takes d5, c takes d5, and again it comes this very important move knight to e5. Still Leela C0 has a good control of the e5 square, but Stockfish now has the opportunity to secure the king. And the problem is now you cannot take the pawn, the knight on f3. It seems like a great idea, but after e takes f3, the problem is now the open e file. You have to castle, I think, queenside castling, and the problem is now after bishop to b5, you don't have a good square to fix your knight. Actually, when will it play like in this game, two bishops versus a bishop and a knight, what you would love to do is cement and fix the knight somewhere in the center of the board. So the good squares, of course, for the knight would be the square e5 and also the square c5, but the knight on e5 can be kicked away with the potential f4 move, so there's no way you can cement your knight. And knight to c5, I think, would be immediately met with a b4, a takes b4, a takes b4, and now wherever you go, this knight would be simply out of game. Now a Stockfish 13 could use maybe the e file and then cement, for instance, this one of these rooks on the square e6. This knight would be really out of game. This knight would be paralyzed. So as I said, no fixing the knight in this particular scenario. The knight is simply a bad piece here. So here in the game, after queenside castling, knight to c5 anyway, played by, but again, you see this idea. b4, even without the trades of knights on f3, this b4 is the main issue. You cannot fix the knights. Actually, what a Bogo Indian, Nimzo Indian defense player loves to do is giving up up like in this game, bishop to c3, then after bishop takes c3 is then to fix the position on dark squares, creating really fixed knight position, fixed pawn structures on dark squares. Here it's not the possibility Stockfish attacks it immediately, although Stockfish has castled here queenside, is also weakening the king a little bit further, but after a takes b4, a takes b4, knight to a4, and now Stockfish has a great square here, is the square d4. If you try here bishop to d5 immediately, it's not so good. I think we can kick away the bishop here immediately with e4, then f4 is here a possibility. The king would stay here a little bit too long in the center. Here knight to f5 is also a possibility, attacking the queen, attacking here the weak g7s. But as I said, I think we can gain at least 2 tempi here. First f4, e4, then rook to e1. This is a bad position. So after the move e4, we could also try bishop to b5, attacking, for instance, this knight twice, and as I said, but first maybe knight to f5. This is really a bad game already for Leela c0. So after the move knight to c5, as I said, b4, a takes b, a takes b, knight to a4, and now knight to d4, knight takes c3. We have queen to c3. No checks are possible by the rook. That's the most important thing here. And now again Leela c0 goes after this pawn. It's actually such a poisoned pawn because Stockfish plays now immediately again this idea f4. We have knight to c4, the knight gets cemented, but now e4. The problem is now after queen to e4, you get again a rook to e1, and the queen stays simply too much on the same file like the king, and you will probably lose the queen. In the game, Leela tried to counterattack. Rook to h3, we have a knight to b3 covering everything, and now of course if you take with the bishop you lose the knight, so that's why Leela tried queen to e4, but here rook to e1, it's a bad game. Here we have rook to e1, queen takes rook on e1, queen to e1, king to d8, and now after the move rook to g3, Stockfish 13 defends this position, is simply up. The exchange has the queen for the rook, but it's not so easy now even to play the game because the activity of black's pieces is also good here. Leela c0 fixes the pawn with the fixes the knight with the move b5. We have queen to d1, c6, and now queen to e2. Here we have rook to h1, attacking the bishop on f1, and now rook to d3, rook to h8, and now king to d1, trying to get with the king on a more secure square. Rook to e8, and now queen to f2. We have king to c7, and now rook to c3, bishop to e4, queen to d4. You see Leela c0 is finding now good ways to activate the queen. Bishop to f5, and now rook to c4. I think it's a good choice, simply getting rid of this very annoying knight. The knight, I think the whole attack by black is simply built around this knight. After the move b takes c4, now knight to a5, attacking the rook and also the pawn. Here we have a counter attack, a move here by Leela c0, c5, but now after move queen to c4, you cannot take the pawn on d4. You could play one check, but it's not so dangerous because after king to d2, here you don't have this other rook on the h file. You would love to do that, of course. You would love to give some checks with this other rook, but this rook is a little bit out of game. In the game, bishop to d7 was played by Leela c0, and now bishop to d3, keeping the position compact. The king is of course endangered a little bit, so that's why you have to keep the pieces near to your king, so you can maybe protect with your bishop, because it's a naked king position, so it's still dangerous. But of course Stockfish calculates this position very easily. Here if we move rook to h8, finally Leela c0 is trying to get the new rook into the game, trying to attack the king further. We have now queen to d5, we have a check, king to c3, a new check, and now knight to b3. You see everything is compact, everything is glued together. The king is protected here. We have c takes b4, king to b4, again a new check, but still Stockfish can hide. We have rook to h3. There are now maybe some pinning ideas to maybe pin this bishop, to take out the bishop and similar stuff. Here in the game, queen to f7 played by Stockfish 13. Stockfish is trying to grab this pawn. We have a rook to f4, but now after Qxg7. At least what Stockfish 13 gets gained here is a pass pawn. So it's the pass pawn situation you have to create here. If you try to stay simply with your pieces, I think if Stockfish 13 wouldn't find ways to take out this pawn, then actually it would be a draw, because this rook's activity is simply too much to handle. At least after this pawn Qxg7, at least we can always deflect these pieces by pushing the pawn further, so the activity of this rook is not so dangerous anymore. The rooks have to always come back and protect the potential promotion on the g file. So here rook to f3, played by Lila c0. We have knight to c1, we have king to c6, queen to f7, bishop to f5, trying to trade off the bishops, and now g7, simply pushing the pawn, bishop to d3, knight to d3, rook to d3, and now you can play some checks, but here after promotion of queen, it was simply game over. So great attack in the Bogo Indian setup, really wild stuff. As I said, 20 plus 29 for Stockfish 13. Incredible games they have played. Still Stockfish 13 is simply too strong for Lila c0. We'll see what will happen in the near future of this computer chess engine world. So far Stockfish is a monster. Stockfish is basically unbeatable. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more games from this tournament, check out my covered games so far, the best chess games played by the engines. Here's the link. And if you like to see some human games, check out my best chess games of all time series, from of course best chess players in history, Magnus Carlsen, and so on. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.